Good afternoon. Thank you for that introduction, Mayor. And I will quickly tell you who I am not. I am not the head of the foundation. Our executive director, Carol Stern, was on her way here yesterday, and like so many of us, ran into some travel troubles. And so I send her regrets. I bring her regrets. She was really excited to be a part of this panel. I'm joined by Mayor Kate Gallego of the City of Phoenix, who has hit the ground running with the conference since taking office. Thank you for joining us. And I'm also joined by your former conference president, Mayor of Louisville, Mayor Greg Fischer. So thank you for being here. We had a third member of the panel, Mayor Stephen Reed of Montgomery, who I believe is also somewhere in transit today. So again, thank you for joining us for this important conversation. We want to talk about how philanthropy, government, business, how we can all work together across sectors. And it's something that's really important for our foundation, because we're a 35-year-old foundation, and while we're clearly related, we are separate from Walmart, the company. We were founded by Sam and Helen Walton and are today governed by their children, their grandchildren, and their spouses. And really some of the projects and the impact that we are most proud of and that has been the most lasting is the result of partnership across sectors. And so we think about the work in coastal Louisiana that has brought together global environmental NGOs with chambers of commerce, with shrimpers, with oystermen, all working to rebuild wetlands to protect not only nature, but the economy. And then I can't follow the Climate Protection Awards without recognizing the city of Fayetteville. It's also in our backyard of Northwest Arkansas, one of the first winners of the Climate Protection Awards for a regional trail system that has today become an artery through 6 communities, providing alternate transportation, recreation, uniting unique downtowns, unique cultures, and driving the economy, and has led to the creation of more than 300 miles of trails in our community. So it's just really exciting to see what happens when we can all work together and leverage our strengths. So I want to start with both of you. The pandemic has made it clear that, if we didn't already know this, that the problems that we're trying to address, no one sector really has the solutions and can bring about lasting change. So talk about the past few years and how you've worked with other sectors, with business, with philanthropy. I'll start with you, Mayor.
Wonderful. Phoenix Mayor Kate Gallego, pleased to be here with you. At the beginning of the pandemic, I think we all remember how difficult it was to source different types of equipment. It was like everyone's cousin knew a guy who had a connection in China that could get you masks, or I hope that wasn't just in Phoenix. We were able to work with philanthropy to get critical safety equipment, and then also to help address digital equity issues. We had so many students in the city of Phoenix who couldn't get online. They didn't have devices, or everyone in the family was sharing a single cell phone. And we were able to partner with philanthropy, who had some better connections to get huge orders of laptops and tablets quickly. We also had a church that gave us $1 million to purchase 10,000 devices, and then we were able to add on some of our federal dollars as well to make sure that every student in Phoenix had a device and could go online, and that was really, really meaningful to us. And so it was not just dollars, but also connections that were helpful. Another success story that I think might be meaningful to other mayors is we decided to put a lot of services on a mobile basis. So first we did vaccinations in our mobile units. We found you'd be much more successful if you went to someone's church or their school, a familiar place. There were some people who would be more likely to get vaccinated in a trusted location than go to a mass site. And then we learned from that and decided to do mobile career units, and Bloomberg helped us with that particular partnership. So we can now go into your community, into different parts of Phoenix, and interview people on site. You can have a video uplink and do a job interview. I interviewed at the Renaissance Hotel in downtown Phoenix, but I didn't get an offer, so I'm here today.
We're glad you're here. Glad you're here. Mayor
I'll
Fischer,
take
your
a different
reflection.
approach on that and talk about public safety, because one of the things that we saw in my city and almost every city in the country in the middle of that first pandemic summer was a rise in gun violence. So it led to a lot of interest in our community in what we were doing to decrease gun violence through our Office for Safe and Healthy Neighborhoods. And so philanthropy really came to the fore there and said, how can we help? So we've reimagined our public safety approach with more of a holistic whole of government, whole of city approach through community mobilization investments in prevention and intervention and reentry. And then law enforcement is just one of those pillars. Most people automatically think about more police when it comes to reducing gun violence, but it's a much more comprehensive approach that's required. And it's one that brought a lot of our philanthropic institutions to help the city during that difficult time.
I'm going to stay with you for just a second, Mayor. We've heard a lot about the influx of federal dollars that are coming into communities. How are you thinking about that and working with other sectors as far as how to best leverage those dollars?
I mean, you really want to be thinking about how to get your big bang for the buck when you get a federal grant, and it can offshoot in many different ways. So one that I'm really proud of is what we've done to increase our affordable housing in the community through a HUD grant. The HUD grant was about $40 million or so, but we've leveraged that up to about $350 million. And then we also brought in some of our other philanthropic partners to say, when we have a great or new investment in an area of town that's traditionally been underinvested, how are we going to make sure that as we regenerate, the people are not displaced? So we have a sister effort called Russell Place of Promise that we've had over 200 community meetings. So we're regenerating the community from the ground level up and making sure that people can afford to stay in the community as it increases as well. That would not have happened were it not for that $40 million HUD investment that we've been able to build off of.
And it's, one of the reasons this conversation is so important to us is mayors really sit at the intersection of a couple of priorities for our work. One is what you mentioned, the ability to make dollars go further, which also leads to, we believe, more durable change. But we also really care about community-led change. Mayor, in your city, water is really important. It's really important to us. Tell us how you're thinking about conserving water and working with other partners to make sure that both city and residents and businesses have enough water.
So, like many other cities in this part of the world, the Colorado River system is very important to Phoenix. It unfortunately has been in the news a lot because Lake Mead, which is the reservoir with the largest capacity, is at disturbingly low levels. I don't know if I should reference this or not, but it's probably something that maybe caught people's eyes. There was a body found in a barrel as the lake declined in levels, and some scary drought issues that are facing us. But we've actually been partnering with the Walton Foundation since 2017 to try to address lake levels. It was a unique partnership that included the City of Phoenix, the Gila River Indian community, and a few other stakeholders, where we were able to provide support to the Gila River Indian community to leave more water in the river, and then that shores up the system for all of us. And I think the Walton gift, which was $1 million, was important financially, but also brought a bunch of stakeholders to the table and just different attention than we might have gotten without Walton. And then Walton, it's not just financial, but there's also people who have deep expertise in the area. And it's really valuable for us to have a stakeholder who's more focused on results than just protecting the water supply that you are responsible for. In the West, we sometimes say that whiskey is for drinking and water is for fighting. And Walton was more of a neutral party who was trying to look out for the best result overall, and having that type of stakeholder at the table was valuable. Another great water partnership we had was with the National Forest Foundations, the USDA, and the Forest Service. Phoenix also gets water from the Salton Verde River system, which has had a lot of forest fires, and that sends us very sooty water, which I'm sure as a mayor you know, if the water changes color when it comes out of the tap,
you hear about it.
You are hearing about it. And we knew that if we invested in forest health, we could have a much more stable water system, but also a cleaner water system. And we were able to use philanthropy to leverage the city's investment in our national forest system, which for us is ecosystem protection and water supply surety.
just another thing that's so important about that work is the way that you brought the tribal interest into the conversation, and something that has long been missing. So, really appreciate the work there. Mayor Fischer, we talked a little bit about education. How are you thinking about collaboration and partnerships to improve outcomes for students in your community?
Well, I would ask mayors, what is the root cause of most of the challenges that you have as a mayor? If you're like me, it's poverty. Poverty drives so many of the challenges that we have in our communities, from healthcare gaps, crime, goes on and on. So what's the number one disruptor of poverty? Education. And specifically, the best predictor is a post-secondary credential or a degree will disrupt generational poverty. So the question for us as mayors, whether you control your school systems or not, how do you use our ability to convene everybody in our cities, from businesses to understand what their needs are, to healthcare providers, to working moms, to say, how do we move through this so that we can get more post-secondary success? So we created a Cradle to Career program where there's no child left behind. One of the reasons I ran for a third term as mayor was to make sure it was fully funded. So now every child, every graduate of our public school system, we have about 100,000 kids in our public schools, every one of them now has a promised scholarship. There is no financial constraint to getting a post-secondary degree or a credential. The city's role in that was one as a consciousness elevator around fairness and equity, that every child should have the future that is bright and full of opportunity. And that means we got to help our under-resourced families. When you think about most of the children of the people in this room, if your kid has a problem, you probably can help get them out of school time help or mentoring or tutoring. That is not the case with our low-income students. And that's, in my view, that is just not right. It's not fair. So when you have the privilege to be a mayor, and when you can bring people together, and when you can raise money to make sure that playing field is leveled for everybody, I think there's really probably no greater blessing that you can have as a mayor, because this changes generations to come. So now for that family where you had a single parent working 2 or 3 jobs, not knowing how their kids are going to get out of that cycle, now that parent can tell their child the Evolve 502 program through Jefferson County Public Schools, no barrier to getting a post-secondary degree. So we were the convener, we were the primary fundraiser. I got all of the constituents to work on each of the Metro Council people, so they helped fund this as well. We've raised around $35 million in total, and around $4 million of that has come from their city government, and hopefully another $3 million here in the next couple of weeks. When that happens, every child from 6th grade forward has a free college education or a free credential.
It's amazing. Congrats.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so tell me, what can philanthropy, what can nonprofits and foundations do to better work with mayors and city government? We'll start with you, Mayor Gallego.
Wonderful. So I actually was able to attend an Accelerator for America meeting in Louisville, and one of the great takeaways I got from that is that philanthropy and mayors should be sitting down right now as we do our second tranche of American Rescue Plan dollars. We want to use those dollars as effectively as possible. I assume I'm not the only mayor who at the beginning of this process says, it's one-time money, we're gonna spend it on one-time expenses, and now you're seeing programs that you're falling in love with and you wanna continue. I've learned from other mayors that have sat down with philanthropy and are trying to figure out a way, how do we design programs that meet the needs of local foundations, but where they might wanna continue it when we don't have those federal dollars anymore. Because of this conversation, I'm now committed every 6 months to sit down with the philanthropic leaders in my city, talk about what my priorities are and what theirs are. And I think that could lead to taking these great one-time investments and really making sure that we can keep them going for a generation. So that, if I had one takeaway from this panel today, it's as you're making these big decisions in the next few weeks, sit down with philanthropy, talk about what you're doing and what we might be able to continue for the long term.
Excuse me.
I'd focus on innovation. You know, philanthropy is the venture capital for public policy. Citizens don't really take very well to us saying, well, we're going to make a bet that this will work out. They want to see the taxpayer dollars going effectively towards some type of program or service. Philanthropy, on the other hand, is an opportunity to see, can we break the mold here? Can we innovate? Can we have breakthrough? So we've had some great partners in that effort. And it's really the most fun area of philanthropy as well. Our Microsoft Future of Work initiative, we focus on young black females with artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, data science. And we're showing when we're intentional, we have 42% participation from young black females in that. That is way more than what their percentage is in our city. Bloomberg and their help on innovation teams was extremely important for us to build the capacity then that we could drive and integrate innovation into all of our workflows. And then the last project I'll talk about is our Center for Enviromics. So everybody is familiar with the genome and how important and impactful the genome was to understanding the human body. So we're working with the University of Louisville on the Envirome. So the Envirome is understanding more discreetly the impact of the human and nature and the relationship between the two. So the improvements that we're seeing on cardiovascular health in our community by strategically locating vegetative medicine by people with high risk, health risk, is really interesting to see. Vegetative medicine is a fancy word for trees and shrubs and plants. That's what we all throughout mankind grew up with, but we've been removed from that somewhat in our modern world. So just as the genome was important, the envirome is going to be equally important for the future of our country.
I'm so glad that you touched on innovation, because I do think that's someplace that, you know, our society wants philanthropy to play a role and to step up and try new things and to innovate. We've got just a couple more minutes, and you guys have already done a fantastic job of this, but what advice would you give to your fellow mayors as they're thinking about putting together partnerships in the future? You gave me advice, now give them advice.
We have a series of foundations in Phoenix that have very specific language about their giving priorities, but when I've talked to them about real needs in our community, they have been willing to be flexible, and sometimes they see how their language fits what I'm looking in a way that I had not. So I think another piece of advice was give it a try, and don't be the one who takes yourself out of a potential partnership.
We do have our own language. I'm sorry about that.
I'm an old sales manager, so for mayors, I would say, think about foundations as sales prospects, and you got to make sales calls on them. You know, so understand what they like to fund, know what your needs are, go and make a specific sales call, whether it's in your city or whether it's in New York, Washington, Los Angeles. Show up prepared for an ask in the beginning of a relationship. For new mayors in particular, you're so busy kind of getting organized. There's a long sales cycle sometimes with getting foundations to invest in your city. It can be multiple years. And so you could be out of office when you're just really starting these relationships. So get started early, particularly with the national foundations. We're a medium-sized city in Louisville. Our population's around 800,000 or so. It seemed to me like the larger national foundations were working in primarily the big cities. But if you go and cultivate those relationships, you can really get them to work with you in medium-sized and small cities as well. And then the last thing, and Mayor Gallego referred to this, on the local level, make sure that you're doing joint strategic planning and annual planning with your foundations. It's kind of ironic to me that your local foundations want to help the city. So you would think the first stop that they would have, it would be the mayor's office, because who knows more about what the city needs than the mayor? But sometimes the foundations don't have that insight. So you have to help them with that insight. And then setting up a system of annual strategic planning with them can really help move whatever your goals are forward.
Thank you. I mean, I think there's just no doubt that right now we're in an all hands on deck moment. And so to have the ability to partner with cities and with other sectors, I think is so powerful. And I thank you both for joining us for this conversation. Thank you all.